was very indecisive on whether or not I wanted to discuss this series at all. I was very familiar with Jeffrey Dahmer and his crimes, but I've never seen it depicted in this way. It really low-key had me emotional. Let's talk about it. Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Tyra here with another struggle review, here to discuss Dahmer. Now this is a brand new limited series available on Netflix and it stars Evan Peters. Now before I get into all things white privilege and mental illness, I need you guys to drop down and subscribe to my channel and like this video. I'm going to give you guys a moment to do that, and then we're going to come back and discuss. You know, a show has really hit a nerve when you watch anything about the likes of Jeffrey Dahmer, and in the end, the person you're the least upset with in the story is Jeffrey Dahmer.
Go back.
Now that you guys have hopefully subscribed to see more of me, let's get into this show. Now, I low-key don't even know where to start, but to put things into perspective in my eyes, nothing as far as a movie or a show has affected me so heavily since I watched When They See Us. Which is crazy with the subject matter of both shows being on opposite ends of the spectrum. But the common thread in both series is the mistreatment, the neglect, the overall disrespect of Black and brown people. And both shows not only leave you feeling really informed, but it also leaves you with this sense of hopelessness that things are not changing and things are not getting any better. Now me as a horror fan, I was sure probably as like a kid or more so a teenager to inform myself of the real horrors in the world, like the Night Stalker, your Ted Bundys, John Wayne Gacy, and most definitely Jeffrey Dahmer. And I was absolutely fascinated by it. I always had the sense of the truth being stranger than fiction. So rather me be in fear of a horror movie, which I absolutely love, the things that I found to be most scary was what, flesh and blood like myself was capable of. A serial killer who not only targeted Black and brown men, but often gay men. We sedate them, we torture them, we dissect them, and then we discard them like they were absolutely nothing, and that's discarding what we didn't decide to eat. Absolutely sick. So when I saw that Evan Peters and Ryan Murphy were going to be behind this show, I honestly did not flock to it because I thought I knew exactly what to expect as a fan of American Horror Story, and knowing that some of the most infamous serial killers are used as source material for his show. He does not shy away from gore. It's, exploitative. It's a bloodbath. We get really sick and perverse subject matter displayed in the most beautiful way with the most intelligent writing. It's always really interesting. I really thought putting the Jeffrey Dahmer serial killer into a hands like a Ryan Murphy would literally be a beautiful yet non-stop sick horror show of everything that Jeffrey Dahmer had to offer. I felt like this was going to be a vehicle to push along, his narratives, his thought, go all the way inside of his brain, and that this would solely just simply be about him and the sadistic ways that he went about murdering these men. Rarely do we explore anything outside of that. Boy, was I shocked to find out that there was so much more here to be offered. Now, the best thing that this show could have ever had to offer was how they displayed the victims here. Not to, have anything towards Ryan Murphy or Evan Peters as an actor, but I really did not expect to feel any ounce of emotion for the victims. Rarely do we see that in anything that is mainly focusing on the serial killer who committed the murders. But every single person that we meet who happens to be a victim, whether they, escaped or not, you feel for each and every one of them. Even though we have Dahmer using the exact same things to entrap these men, sedate them, lure them in to where, he eventually kills them, it never feels formulaic. You never feel like one guy is the same. You never get lost. Even though this show is ultimately about Jeffrey Dahmer, they still frame the victims in the murders in a way that you feel for every single man that you see, and you ultimately want them to fight. You don't want them to take the drink. You want them to get away, even though we already know in the end that they don't. You feel each and every one of these murders in your heart, in your body, in your spirit, and you just have such passion for these men, even though we have these murders mostly taking place off of screen. I really respected and enjoyed the fact that we didn't dive fully in on the gore and try to exploit, all of the murders and all of the things that he did as much as we can, for views and, shock value. We did not have Ryan Murphy and the writers go for that low-hanging fruit. In fact, majority of the kills here are actually done off screen, and you don't really see a whole lot of blood, in my opinion, especially with the way that he committed these murders. It could have been just a gross spectacle, but it's really subtle and strictly sound, and that really pays tribute to the acting performances here. Not only Evan Peters as Dahmer, but Niecy Nash, their reactions. You get the joy that he's taking place in committing these murders, and you also have her reaction as the neighbor who is just sickened by what she could possibly imagine is going on next door. And we are equally sickened as an audience. I also really enjoyed the up close and personal depictions that we got of the victims. The depiction of Tracy Edwards, one of the rare victims to get away, and the man who eventually got Dahmer arrested. When I tell you I was so invested and scared for Tracy, like, what it must have felt like to be in that predicament, be in that room. Like, if anything, this show makes you extremely cautious, as if you aren't already. Of course, this is a different time. The need to pretend and role play with hopes to get away with your life from this crazy person. Like, oh my goodness, Tracy had me going. I did not know exactly where this show would start. So the fact that we started kind of at the end really threw me off guard. So in my mind, I'm thinking that we're going through all of these motions for this victim to not get away. So the fact that this wasn't that was very surprising. And then of course the aftermath of constantly, we're going to get into the police and their trash ass behavior in this show, but I was scared. And the same can be said for the depiction of Ronald Flowers. I was like, oh, look at Ricky from Pose. That need of, going with your gut, like trust. When you feel like something is not right, you need to move around. And once again, we have somebody getting away with their life, by the skin of their teeth, just by happenstance. It is just such a scary situation. But more than that, more than, being sedated, being drugged, getting away with your life, somebody literally about to take pleasure in killing you. The most unforgivable part concerning both of these men is definitely the element of not being heard, not being taken serious, your life feeling like it's worth it, nobody listening to you. Like, the running theme here with the Jeffrey Dahmer story and these black and brown victims who just got away, people in the neighborhood, people like Glenda Cleveland, being made to feel so small, so beneath the common courtesy of checking in to make sure you're safe, to make sure your concerns are being heard, just being demeaned and undermined in every single way, strictly based off of your community, your race. Like, it shouldn't even be shocking at this point. We know what it is, but for some reason, the way that it's shown here and the way that they continue to inject it throughout the story, and with this being a real life actual story, it stings and makes you so freaking upset, because you really get to follow up with them and see how these things affected them. Not only do I have to run from the fear of what happened with a person like Jeffrey Dahmer trying to take my life, but I think 10 times over, the real fear and the element of hurt is stemming from not being heard, not being taken serious, pretty much, being told that your life means nothing. And these points are definitely driven home by the personal one-on-one time that we get to spend with some of the victims, like the 14-year-old boy, Konarak, who was literally handed back to Dahmer on a platter by the police because they were just that unconcerned at the fact that he did look like a child. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. How could you even look at him and go, oh yeah. Their whole family dynamic for Dahmer to not have gotten only one of this family's sons, and he's later charged for SA, but two, the whole situation for the younger sibling to put himself even in the path of a Dahmer yet again after already going through the trial for what took place with his older brother, that freaking blew my mind, and I honestly did not understand how that baby wound up there and what exactly was going on. Now, of course, we are made to understand, especially if you are familiar with Jeffrey Dahmer in any way, he is not simply sedating these men, but he is offering them money. He is claiming he's a photographer, at which, they are going up to take new photos and hopefully receive payment in the end. So there is that element of, where I needed the money. But just that whole family situation just really threw me for a loop. I was not familiar with that part completely, but it definitely made me want to hold both of my children. Like, take care and keep an eye on your children. When we get into the one that hit the most, and we get into Tony Hughes' storyline, at which we have a whole episode dedicated to him because he was one of the rare victims that Dahmer decided not to sedate and maybe have some sense of normacy for, to try to have a relationship with him. And we go from, infancy, where he's, diagnosed as deaf, and we, kind of travel with him, meet the family, get to know his personality, learn, how vivacious and lively he is. Honey, him having those signing conversations with his deaf friends was freaking everything. I absolutely love Tony. To give us that up close and personal connection with a character like Tony, it just really hits home what's really being taken away from these families, from these neighborhoods. People, like, spirits are broken. This is not just one isolated event that affects the victim. This affects everybody so much more, and Tony was absolutely that character that did that for me. And it also debunked the theories, they try to make excuses for serial killers. Well, maybe if they had someone, maybe if that one person would have. Tony was really trying to be that one person, and he still ended up dead the conversation. Now, getting into Evan Peters as Dahmer itself, he has discussed in the past taking a break from things like American Horror Story for the toll that it takes on his mental health, having to, put your body and your mental state through so many things to, embody certain characters, certain elements, certain scenes. It can all become so much. And I was like, with that being said, what exactly is this role in particular doing? Because when I tell you, this is such a chilling performance and very Jeffrey Dahmer in every single way. The dialect, the mannerisms, that overall unsettling, eerie aura that he tends to give off that says, I'm completely detached from reality. And they decide to go the extra mile to not only give us this elevated as Evan Peters performance, but we give so much depth and so much backstory with things like the toxic upbringing with his parents. The mental illness is so real and so present, and everybody is not meant to be a parent. And I am not just strictly talking about the mother. The mother needed support and efficient therapy, but we got pills and we became really absent as a mother, really volatile. Later worried about UFOs and overdosing, completely leaving her son be long before she walked out of the house. I don't care what anybody has to say about anything. Both of these parents, as well as grandma, knew that something was wrong with Jeffrey Dahmer and chose not to do anything about it, chose to enable him, chose to make constant, repeated excuses. And nobody is the toughest repeat offender more than his father. Richard Jenkins here delivers a brilliant performance as Jeffrey Dahmer's dad. He is clearly a man that's a product of his time. He wanted that perfection. His family from top to bottom was anything but that, and he did not know how to handle it except for being absent. And as we see on both of the parents' part, playing the blame game, when in actuality there is blame to be had on both parts. Child, we're not even gonna get into Dahmer's mama popping all of those happy pills while she was pregnant. We ain't gonna get into the system failing that whole family right away, because we popping pills, we overdosing. Didn't nobody do no wellness checks. Didn't nobody come remove the children from the home. It was just a Tuesday, child. It was a Tuesday. But selfishly, all this family knew how to do was to deflect, run away, and enable. All caps on enable his behavior all the way to the very end. The total bliss of sublimely ignoring all the signs that the son was anything but insane is crazy to me. It's both parents all to mask the fact that they knew something was off about him and didn't want to deal with his behavior, didn't want to deal with the failure of their marriage, so they both wind up constantly leaving somebody like Dahmer to his own devices. Alone, go to college, alone, go to the army, alone, and deflect his sexuality, deflect the mannequin, deflect assault charges being brought against your son saying that he touched a child, deflect the alcoholism, deflect pawning the boy off on your sweet, poor, unsuspecting mother who was deflecting all on her own. When your son sits in your face and says, I'm not okay, something's wrong with me, I'm not normal, I'm weird, something's off, I'm having these thoughts, and you completely throw that away and find ways to get the normacy that you want from your son. Oh no, I want my son to be happy, sleeping with women, going to college, getting a great job. Yeah, your son was never that. When we go those type of routes as a family, everybody is mentally ill, in my opinion, and we're very complacent in the murders that were all taking place. I felt like all of them knew and all of them chose to do nothing about it, because if we did something about it and we said something, we would have to admit a whole lot of things about ourselves as people, as a family, and who our son really is. Sadly, the one thing that the father did decide to dive into as far as, crafting and helping his son is the one thing that led and assisted him in the way that he decided to go about killing his victims, piquing that interest as far as, the inner workings of the human body and going all off into feeding into his sick, perverse fantasies of what he feels like, his interests were, not only gay men, but possessing them, controlling them, later mutilating them, eventually consuming their body parts, eventually trying to lobotomize them, to possess them to where we don't have to kill them, but I have full control to where they can't go anywhere, pushing those sexual boundaries for what he felt like would fulfill him as a lover. The way that he decided to conduct himself with his victims, the way that he decided to target this certain demographic, this certain group, was definitely him trying to conceal his own sexuality. As we see not only in the show, but in, photos, different documentaries, he was not, a bad looking guy. A lot of these men who decided to go along with him, it wasn't just for the money. He did not, kill every single person that he had an encounter with sexually. He did not have a hard time getting men. But in my opinion, it wasn't just about getting the man, it was about controlling the sex. Via this series, I don't think even one time we saw him be penetrated by anybody. I feel like it was that same old closeted mentality of, I'm not bringing shame up on myself, shame up on my family. He decided to, continue to keep his sexuality a secret. If I allow somebody to control the sex, to penetrate me, it's me admitting that I'm gay. Very much so, ain't nobody bending me over for colored girls. Like, it's a hot mess. We have his dad throughout the series projecting, you got a woman yet? You got some? Where's the girls? And it's just like, no, for a fact that your son has showed or displayed no interest in women. But in his mind, we have him say to his grandmother, I wouldn't bring shame upon the family. I'm not like that. So to prove to my mental mind that I'm not like that, nobody's, penetrating me, and I don't even have to deal with the pushback of trying to figure out, or explain myself. I can just sedate them, do what I want, and have full control and just burn the evidence in the end. Not only that, but I get to, relive it with pictures, with all these sick images, with all the trophies and, skulls and body parts that I decided to keep. And I get to dissect them and, pull them apart and fulfill every ounce of my fantasy. He really thought that the things that he was doing was okay. But the question that plagues a character like a Jeffrey Dahmer is, what was he saying? Was he all there? Do we really think he knew what he was doing? Hell to the motherfucking yeah. Like, absolutely. The forethought to be strategic enough to move into that neighborhood with the intent to do what he wanted to do. Like, this was all planned, the whole escapade of getting the man, sedating, the whole repeat routine, everything that, every step that he took to commit those murders, whether it was the first one to the last one, it all took planning, it all took forethought, to go in people's face and smile and be friendly, go to everyday jobs, this whole facade. Very much so an intelligent man. He knew that placing that type of scenario in that particular neighborhood would go unnoticed because nobody would give a damn. And he was white ass Jeffrey Dahmer, who had gotten away with so much previous to that. It's definitely not gonna matter now. Look at where I am living. That takes planning. Trying to have the whole insanity plea. They always trying to go for the goddamn insanity plea. Oh, he needs help. He needs counseling. Fuck all of that, Dad. The time to get help and counseling was way before he committed his first murder. Fuck out of my face. Speaking of help, the legal system, the police here within this show was probably the thing that upset me the most. Like, why? I mean, we know why, but why? I mean, do we literally have to have Jeffrey Dahmer stand on the corner holding a corpse with a heart on his shoulder in a blood-soaked t-shirt for you guys to get the memo and give two fucks? From the police department to the judges to, the neighborhood, the smell, Glenda Cleveland's cries going completely unheard until the likes of Jesse Jackson decided to come to town after it was all, said and done. Far too late to just really intervene. The murders have already took place and I've been blatantly ignored. Shout out to Niecy Nash showing up in this freaking series, like somewhere around Claws, When They See Us, the Kamaya Mobley story, Selma, Beauty, the new shit that came out on Netflix. She has been coming through and showing up with these really in-depth performances as an actress, and you really felt the passion that she felt for that neighborhood and just not being heard or being taken serious, feeling just absolutely small when I'm literally smelling bodies and hearing bodies drop from my vent. Handing over that 14-year-old boy to Dahmer to die and not even doing the due diligence to maybe want to find out who he is. Insane. The slap on the wrist in the courtroom when we are convicted of the sexual assault of a 13-year-old boy. But yet, the records can be concealed. We can, semi go to jail, but, be on a work release program to continue life, be able to get job after job, go to jail in some lackluster, low jail facility where we can be on work release to still obtain and have a job, be able to have our records sealed, be able to be discharged from the Army for reasons and not even discuss, what we were exactly discharged for, other behavior, all of the alcoholism, the constant stops, being stopped drunk with a whole body in our back seat. The fact that all it would have taken is for one officer, one person to care. This man continued to do the same routine for years and then later for months to obtain and kill these men. All it would have taken is for one person to backtrack, one person to care, one person to inquire and go into that apartment, one single officer to make this much effort, and nobody cared. Not only did we not care, but we took pleasure in not caring. Like the way that Dahmer presented himself, the lies that were told, the seedy environment as far as the apartment is concerned, the blood stains, the tools, the drone filled with torsos of men. Like, it was all here, and it was all blatantly ignored just based off of the strength that Dahmer was white. This is a black neighborhood, black people. We don't give a damn. You be careful, Dahmer, because you know how they are. It was absolutely a terrible thing to see, and it just reminds you of the time and time again where racism and bias and sexuality takes precedence over somebody's life. To know that the only reason that Tracy Edmonds wasn't taken and thrown into jail immediately as just a black man running down the street asking for help is because they could not get that cuff off, and they wanted to go to Dahmer's place to get the key just so they could rearrest him and, do their due diligence and just, happen to have rolled up on those photos. Like, this series gives you a really good visual for how the legal system works. The whole bias of we take care of our own. It's not so much about protecting the people. It's just about other officers, supporting other officers in their fuck shit, which we see often, but it's a different breed when you get to see it up close and personal in 1991, or we go back to the 80s, 60s, 70s. Like, it's just a repeating cycle to not protect black or brown people, but uphold somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer in their fuck shit solely because they're white. All the chances that we saw him receive repeatedly in the show is just absolutely appalling. We get to see these officers harass families. We get to see them be reinstated, be off on a paid leave, be rewarded, be uplifted in their terrible behavior. And the only thing that makes the difference between now and then is that we have a little bit of an upshift in things because everybody has a phone, everybody has a camera, everybody is constantly recording to try to ensure that somebody may get justice if we do have this type of behavior from a police officer now. Now, lastly, I really appreciated the reenactments. They were so spot on as far as the courtroom when we actually have him arrested, us hearing from the families. It was really impactful in my opinion. I love the whole idea of making sure the audience walks away knowing for a fact that the whole sense of what Jeffrey Dahmer did does not end and stop with the victims. It has affected and will continue to affect these families for so many years to come. The idea that even though Jeffrey Dahmer is in prison, this does not stop or change anything for these families. They don't feel like they've gotten any justice. At the end of the day, this is not going to bring any of, their siblings, their sons, their brothers. Nobody's coming back, so it's still really impactful and hurts. Even following up with the man who got away, you still see that everybody still carries around this heavy weight. This one person had such a negative impact on their lives, and everything is changed forever, and no amount of money or jail time is going to fix that. People are left with fear, resentment, anger. Everything is shifted for, years to come, and that's such a hurting feeling. But on the other hand, we have Jeffrey Dahmer seemingly living his best life in prison. Not only do we have his parents on the outside doing selfish things like asking for grace on his part, trying to, get that insanity plea, trying to get him less jail time, trying to have the people that he victimized speak on his behalf. Like, are you fucking insane? And then we have things like his father continuing to support, trying to capitalize off a book. You have changed and ruined so many lives, but yet you're a serial killer. So now you're left to be infamous and be immortalized. You are a part of pop culture. Like, you will go down in history as Jeffrey Dahmer. All of these families are left with absolutely nothing, yet, your face is repeatedly in the paper. People want to know the inner workings of your brain. You have fan mail. You are literally coasting in jail. The way that he is revered once he goes to jail, the way that people make light of the situation, desensitize and detach everything, and we want pictures. I love how they couldn't come and pick up or look in Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment for like 50 years, but as soon as homegirl threw that white boy's camera on the ground, we came and picked her ass up like that. Like, it was no time passed. It was a Tuesday. But It said a lot about serial killers, a lot about jail and what it really means. You literally get to go down in history along with people like Charles Manson and Ted Bundy. Nobody's concerned about the victims. People just want to know why, want to pick apart your brain, want to interview you, want to write a book, want to write a comic book, want to send you money. These people always have fans. It's crazy. So when we have him end up in jail and we have him begin to find Christ and he wants to be delivered, child, okay, no. But the way that he is murdered in jail, the resentment that grows within the prison, because it's just like a walk in the park for him. He is antagonizing the other prisoners. He is being Jeffrey Dahmer. This is pretty much a game to him. Like, this didn't change or offset anything for him. This is just prison. Like, he always knew what he was doing. He always wanted to be caught. And at this point, he's just more consumed with how comfortable he is in prison. He's getting endless attention. He's being doted on. He has fans. He has multiple interviews. He has, endless support and visits from his dad. Nothing has moved or changed for him. He always felt like he was in his right mind, felt like he knew exactly what he was doing. So in his mind, this is just him starting over, and this is the new chapter of his life. Those long years and stints that he was going to have to do in prison was absolutely nothing. So it spoke a lot to the state of what prison is, mental illness, not only when we get into Dahmer, but when we get into the person that they use to murder him. Here we have a man who is clearly mentally unstable. I believe that he was also in jail for murder, but he is, finding Christ, and he is having an inner complex of him being a messenger from God that is telling him that he needs to kill somebody like Dahmer. The way that nobody cared about not only Dahmer's mental state for the entirety of the series, but the black man who eventually murdered Dahmer, who was set, purposely in that setting to kill him, was just really, really sad. You see that the cycle is just repeating. Not only did we not, help all of these black victims who were dead at the hand of Dahmer, but we used this black man to execute him. Once again, disregarding someone's mental state in their life. Like, oh Lord, it was just too much. But we see that Dahmer, and also in real life, that he absolutely did not put up a fight, and he went out with the same weapon that he used to execute his first victim, which says a whole lot in itself. But besides some of the people like Linda Cleveland and the 14-year-old boy's dad, or the parents of the victims linking up, nothing changed and nothing came out of this. Like, you still have Dahmer's dad there. Felt like no lessons were learned to, cry over his body. He still loved his son no matter what. More power to you, bruh. You have his mother end up, trying to take herself out, and it's a Tuesday like it was before. You have all the people who stayed in that apartment building uprooted from their homes. We demolished the building, but we don't even bother to put anything there. I think still to this day, there is nothing there, and it's just, a vacant lot of grass and space. And it's just like, we forgot all about the victims. Nobody ever talks about them. Nobody ever talks about the terrible shit that happened. But what does continue to go on, live on, get a series, get a movie, is Jeffrey Dahmer. So I was really glad that we at least tried to incorporate a whole lot more, because he doesn't need any more popularity. He doesn't need another film, another doc, another anything. Unfortunately, the best thing that his father could have done in the end, which was let them, go and dissect and look. Oh, you don't want your son to be dissected and looked over, but he did it to everybody else. But whatever. We could have let them, go and explore his brain to see where the disconnect was and kind of see what was. That would have helped probably so many. But you know what? But we gonna be on our fuck shit even to the end. But I was really glad here that we did not solely focus on Dahmer, and we did shine a light on the victims as much as we could, all while attaching them still to this sick individual. We need more of this. Now, was this a hard watch? Absolutely. Do I plan to watch it again? Absolutely not. Do I regret watching it? No. I'm very grateful that I did, stick it through to watch it, because even though this is, really tough subject matter like most, it's worth it in the end, and it gives you a whole perspective that you didn't have before, and it also, you know, mirrors a lot of the things that we see going on now when we get into mass shooters and whatnot, and how they are, you know, treated within the media, all the endless grace that we continue to see be given, and oh, you know, what was wrong with them, oh, they were lonely, they were this, their parents, and we see a lot of that, you know, mirrored here within Jeffrey Dahmer, and it's absolutely worth the watch, not only for that aspect, but just to think about the victims and how everything overlaps and affects every little thing. All of that stuff trickles down, and it's important to remember those people. Well, you guys, that was my review for Dahmer. I hope you enjoyed it. Please drop down and tell me what you thought about it and what you thought about this series as a whole. I tried to break it down the best way that I could. This is a, you know, 10 episode series, and there was a whole lot going on, a whole lot that I chose not to focus on because I just had certain things that I wanted to and really truly had the capacity to talk about, because some of it I just couldn't really stomach it. But I look forward to reading you guys' comments. I appreciate you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, subscribe, share. I see you guys next time. Bye.